Well, good day and welcome to you. It is July the 15th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. And just quickly point out, if you want to know more about this information, hopefully you'll look into some of the websites that I provided links for in the description portion of each and every one of these videos to get as much background information as you need to see if there's anything to this or not. So hopefully you look into it. All right, now I have a couple comments I want to cover. First comes from a person named Wizard Weeb. And I don't normally address comments like this, but we might be able to squeeze something out of this and see if we can learn more about this information in the process. So, what did this person have to say? This happened to me. My name is Maitreya, and I just search up what it means and see a bunch of stuff about the devil, like I am confused FR, which, if you're old like me, FR means for real. And the only reason why I know that is I have a teenage daughter who doesn't bother to open her door and go down the hallway and tell me what she wants. As like a normal person, she'd text me. So she puts little things in there like FR, or the one that really got me for a long time was it SMH? I was like, what the heck is SMH? So I had to Google that, and I was like, oh, it's shaking my head. Anyway, and you're probably SMHing because you're like, well, of course that's what that means. Anyway, let's get on with it. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't even believe in spiritual stuff. Sent it to my friends and said I could end the world at any time. LOL. That means laugh out loud. There's also LMAO. If you don't know what that means, look it up. But anyway, thank you, Wizard Weeb, for your comment. It's funny. I've had people in the past comment because they've stumbled across this information because they were Googling their name and this came up. And they're like, what the heck is this? Now, Maitreya is his personal name of the teacher that we talk about. It means the happy one. So it doesn't mean anything about the devil or anything like that that people like to attribute it to. Of course, people are very afraid because they're naturally afraid. Fear is a real problem for everyone, but there are people who are deathly afraid of this information, who and what they think Maitreya is, because they are totally misinterpreting their own scriptures. But the thing of it is that if you look at, because the name Maitreya is very well known in Buddhist texts. Of course, not known at all in the Christian text, probably not known in the Muslim text, and the people who practice Judaism don't know anything about the name Maitreya either way, right? But the thing that, if you really look at it, the texts of each and every one of the major religions, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, or the Buddhist texts, they're all coming from the same source. And most people don't realize this, and they think that that's just for them, coming from what they consider God to be, for whatever they believe and all that kind of stuff. But it's coming from the same source, which is the spiritual hierarchy of this planet. And the teachings that were initially given out by those teachers who the religions were created around talked about this information in the exact same way. Even if you look at Jesus, the Christians have pedestalized him to the point where they view him as the only true Son of God. But if you look historically through Jesus' life, he never said that. And the teachings that he gave to the people were practical teachings for them to live. And the major purpose of the teachings and these teachers is to teach humanity right human relationships, which is what we should all be doing. And it's right human relationships from the highest or broadest point, meaning globally, right human relationships globally, down to each and every one of us individually. But yet we don't. We all harm each other. We all step on each other's toes. We all, try to push each other to get ahead and so forth. There are people who are violent toward one another and so forth like that, because we're not living true to who we truly are as souls, which live moment to moment as right human relationships. But each and every one of these masters who have decided to stay and help humanity came from our humanity, lived the lives that we lived, struggled the way that we struggled, but through their own self-discovery and their own, what their service to humanity and so forth, moved out of the human kingdom into what we know as the spiritual kingdom. And over the centuries and the millennial that we've been writing things down, these teachers have been teaching humanity through their disciples like Jesus, through the Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, and so forth. But the the source of those teachings has always been the same. And so even to the point where each and every one of those religions is awaiting a teacher to come back. And the Buddhists are awaiting the fifth Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, of course. The Christians are awaiting the Christ to come back in their way. The Muslims are looking for the Imam Mahdi to come back at some point. And the Hindus are awaiting Sri Krishna or Kalki Avatar. And of course, the people who practice Judaism are awaiting the Messiah to come back. But they're all waiting on the same teacher. And that's what we talk about on this channel, is that teacher that's expected by all those religions is here. And even people who aren't practicing religion will eventually look to Maitreya as a teacher in the same way. But maybe not necessarily looking at him mystically the way that the religious groups look at him. But over the last few decades, people have looked for the Antichrist to come back, especially here in the United States. And they look in all sorts of directions and they think this person's it. And then when that turns out to not be the person, then they go to the next person. They never go back and say, yeah, you know what, I was wrong about who I originally thought was the Antichrist. They never once say that. I've never heard once somebody saying, yeah, I thought it was so-and-so, but it wasn't. Man, I was wrong. They just go on to the next one, go on to the next one, go on to the next one. But it really is a direct result of the fact that the teacher who they're waiting for is already here. It's affecting them in that way. Where other people, it affects them, it makes them more of who they are, and they become more divided toward the way that they think toward other people and other groups that have maybe divergent types of thinking and so forth. They become more reactionary toward that. Other people, it's inspiring them to change the world in some kind of way that they weren't inspired perhaps, 2 decades ago or 3 decades ago. They didn't care about the world, but now they really do care about helping the planet in some way. This is all the way that we're all responding to the energies of this teacher in the world at this time. So the world's not going to end. And this isn't the end times. That's a totally misinterpretation of people's own scriptures, especially the Christian scriptures. Now, the devil, and this is just, I'm presenting this to you for to look at and to consider. The devil is a representation of the selfish nature of within all of us, not an actual individual that is responsible for all this nefarious things in the world. There is an evil presence in the world from the forces of darkness, but that's totally separate from what the religious view of what the devil is. The devil in the Bible was never really meant to be interpreted as a person, and it was just a symbol that they could relate to. And it seems like especially over the past 10 years, really, we've taken a huge step back as a group of people, especially in the United States, and started to see life more mystically, denying what we already know scientifically to not be true, or to be true. We've denied it, and this is the way it is because it says it in the Bible, and blah, 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 blah. Taking a huge step back, because the Bible was written for a group of people at the time that knew what they knew, and that's all that they knew right then. It's important to look at the Bible from this perspective of today. You have to change some of it and look at it in a different way. I mean, it just makes sense because it was written to people that didn't have an understanding of the universe the way that we do now. But yet people, the only way they can have it make sense and have it make sense for them is to deny what their own eyes are seeing today. It's just quite extraordinary, the times that we're living in. But, for instance, Paul wrote something in there that people like to throw my way from time to time about Maitreya and this information. And they were convinced that Paul was talking about an Antichrist figure when he wrote this. But they would say, how's the saying? What's the Corinthians line? Even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. And they think because Maitreya and people who are talking about Maitreya are talking about the need for peace, the need to end hunger, the need for justice, and so forth. And he will inspire humanity to see the need to create peace, then he must be the Antichrist, because that's what Paul said 2,000 years ago. I think what Paul was talking about was intention, looking at the intentions that we all have, that we think are good, but are selfish in nature. Even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. even our own selfish nature can deceive us into thinking that what we're doing is for the utmost good, but yet it's not. It's selfish. It's very easy to see it in other people, very, very, very difficult to see it in ourselves and our own intentions. It takes a tremendous amount of objectivity to be able to see that. Because what we want, and we only think ourselves is the highest good, when we're really doing a lot of destruction in the world. And if you see it in our political leaders, our economic and business leaders and so forth, you can see it. You see the destructive effect of what they're doing, the selfishness of what they're doing, the greed that's causing them to do it. But yet when they try to rationalize what they're doing, they make it sound like they're doing the best thing for everybody, when actually they're doing the best thing for themselves. Even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. Paul, I think, was talking to people who had no concept of psychology, of the mind even, of intention, and that was his way of explaining it to him to try to get his point across to him. Makes sense to me, but might not make sense to you. It's just something to look at, something to consider. But I think that if you really look at the teachings of Jesus, they were very, very practical, just like the teachings of the Buddha, very, very practical. The teachings of Muhammad, very, very practical. It was the mystical distortions that their followers that probably didn't even meet him or talk to him or really, was translated maybe from one language to another, put in there, that's causing the confusion. But in each and every one of those religions, they're waiting for a teacher to come back. Each and every one, without exception. All expecting him by a different name, all looking for him at a different time, and those kind of things, in a different part of the world and so forth. But it's the same person. And Maitreya has been asked before, when he was living in the Asian community of London, they were thinking he was the Imam Mahdi. People, because it's a Muslim community, there were rumors going around that he was the Imam Mahdi come back. Or the Imam Mahdi. I guess the Imam Mahdi hadn't been here before, so they were waiting for the Imam Mahdi to come back. Excuse me, I kind of misspeak it every time, thinking it's kind of like the Christians are waiting for Christ to come back. But anyway, he said to them, rather than saying, yes, that's who I am, he said, those are just names. They really don't mean anything. But those are names that he's referred to as by people. But he said they only create confusion within the minds of humanity, of the people that are thinking that way. He said he only prefers to be known as the teacher. The same claim that your third grade piano teacher or third grade art teacher or English, whatever, third grade teacher, fifth grade teacher, college professor could make the same claim, that they're a teacher. That's it. He's just here to teach us how to create right human relationships, really, is what it amounts to. Anyway, hopefully that helps. And that kind of leads me to Mark Hill's comment where he says, people should not attain heaven, but attain heaven on earth. And if you look at the teachings of Jesus, even, he was saying the same thing. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus really, I never really read where Jesus was talking about when you die, you go somewhere else. If you believe, you need to believe in him. And if you don't believe in him, those are all written, I think, by Paul and by some of the apostles after, and some of the followers of Christianity after Jesus was alive. But historically, even within the text of the Bible, he didn't really say anything like that. Even to the point where I think when he was talking to the rich man who came up to him who said he wanted to follow Jesus, and Jesus said, well, give up all your worldly possessions and give it to the poor and come follow me, knowing that he couldn't do it because he was attached to it. And he said, well, I can't do that. My father built all this stuff. He slaved for all this stuff, and he turned around and walked away. And Jesus said, what? It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to go into heaven. But it was not just about having material wealth. It's about attachment. And every one of these masters have learned that who and what they thought they were when they were just like us is not real. That they are divine. And then they start to manifest that divinity a little bit by little bit by little bit, just like we are trying to do, to the point where they're manifesting it perfectly. But it takes a long time to get there. It takes a long, arduous path of inward work, of checking their motives, just like Paul was talking about, who's now one of these masters himself. But, that's what they had to do. That's the work that they had to do to get to where they were. That's where they're here to teach us how to do that. So it will be easier and faster and more efficient for us in the coming time to be more like them. and not really follow them in that way, but to be more and true to who we and what we are, to help manifest that. When we start to manifest our own divinity, right human relationships becomes a natural thing, because that's how we all are living, or we should live, you know. So hopefully that helps. But anyway, thanks guys for the compliments. Thanks guys for the comments. I loved addressing it. Maybe we can learn something in the process. You guys have a great weekend. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.